Welcome to Run the Play. Here's your host, Ricky Covington.
Finish the riddle. I scream, you scream, we all scream for
Run the Play!
Yes, Run the Play. Welcome to another Tuesday edition. It may be raining outside here in Evansville, but it's always shining bright right here in the studio. Of course, I'm your host, Ricky Covington, and alongside me, as always, is Alec Bradley and Jordan Fisher. And of course, we have our man running the show, our director, Tristan White, popping in with his own insight as well.
I have to say, we did not go over that before the show, but that was great. Great start to the show. I really approve of it, and I almost fell out of my chair laughing.
Good. See, we tried to surprise you. Yeah. So, gentlemen, happy first day, I guess, it's the first day of the NBA regular season. Hallelujah, we've been waiting. Yep. We will get into that, and we'll give you our predictions for tonight's game as well as for the season. Also, just as important, if not a little more, I guess, tonight is game one of the World Series between the New York Mets and the Kansas City Royals. So we'll have our predictions for that as well. We'll also discuss what we saw from Week 7 of the NFL season, including the Colts, looking like the Colts, still falling to the Saints on Sunday, as well as drama out of Dallas with the Cowboys. But, what else is new there? All that, plus a new segment coming up on today's show. But up first on the RTP chopping block. Last night on Monday Night Football, we saw the struggling Baltimore Ravens face off against the NFC West leading Arizona Cardinals. The game was much closer than I think any of us anticipated, but expected by most, the Cardinals were able to pull out the win behind another strong performance by quarterback Carson Palmer and a flashback game, as you see here, seemingly by veteran running back Chris Johnson. Now, Flacco, on the other hand, for the Ravens, struggled to do it all himself after another lackluster performance from the running game. The Cardinals are sitting at 5-2, while the Ravens have fallen to 1-6. So, Alec, we'll start with you. Was this game more about Arizona continuing to fire, on all cylinders, or more about Baltimore losing their identity altogether?
I think honestly, you need to worry more about the Baltimore Ravens because when they were sitting at 1-4 a couple of weeks ago, you were like, okay, they'll kick it into gear, go on a vintage Ravens run and probably get into the wild card. But as we're seeing now at 1-6, they just don't look like a team that really has an identity right now. The receiving core is pretty much same when your top receiver is a soon-to-be retired 37-year-old Steve Smith Sr. Flacco, he just hasn't been himself this season. He's very turnover-prone, just struggling really until about midway through the fourth quarter where it's just too little too late. And then, that defense, we can see they're missing Terrell Suggs. He was their last great, playmaker from the era from Ed Reed and Ray Lewis, and without him, the defense just looks lost and they can't really stop anybody.
Yeah, and I think this bit of a fall from the elite has kind of been coming. They got to the AFC divisional game last year and lost a very close game to the Patriots. In fact, very end of the game. Certainly, it's a bit of a shock that they're 1-6. But then again, you look at the roster. There's really not a lot to work with on either side of the ball. Mentioned they lost Terrell Suggs, so you lose your vocal leader both on the field and off the field. And then on top of that, Joe Flacco has Steve Smith Sr., who's going to retire at the end of the year. He's playing with broken bones in his back right now, and he's still the best receiver on their team by some stretch of the imagination. Justin Forsett hasn't been what he was last year. It's just been an all-around bad season for the Ravens. Although, granted, they have lost every single game by at least one score. This was their biggest loss by 8 points. Every other game was 6 points or less. And so they've been in every single game. They just haven't been able to finish it out. And I think that just comes down to a lack of talent.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Kind of as I said, the lack of a running game shows. Last year you had Justin Forsett. He was kind of a journeyman running back, seemingly coming out of nowhere, having a 1,300-yard season. So, of course, when that happens, you give him a contract as he got over the offseason. And now, once again, he's back to being that player who, comes out of nowhere. And then also going on to the other side of the ball, coming out of nowhere, as I said, with Chris Johnson, had a Tennessee Titans 2010-esque kind of a game, especially this play. I thought he was down, and then he just got up and started running. I thought he was crazy.
It was a good little deke by him to kind of freeze for a second and then realize he wasn't down. But I know the argument was, was he down because of forward progress? And they didn't call it. The Ravens were wanting it. But nonetheless, CJ2K has certainly been, I guess CJ1K you can call him now, has certainly been a good addition for the Cardinals offense, especially since Ellington's been banged up. But I just think the Cardinals offense in general, when you look at Fitzgerald having a resurgence, Michael Floyd's still there. He hasn't really made the impact everyone thought he would. And John Brown's been certainly a fantastic surprise. This offense is possibly top 5 in the NFL, and there's a reason why they're sitting where they're at.
Exactly. And don't sleep on that defense either. That defense also is top 5, and it's just Bruce Arians has that team going in the right direction. They struggled the past couple of weeks, had two losses that went like 1-2 the past 3 weeks. But, they're still the class of that NFC West because I just don't see anyone else really catching them. The way that offense clicks, they can outscore you. And if it does become down to a defensive struggle, they can really, lock it up with you and shut you down.
Yeah. How much do you think the Colts miss Bruce Arians right now?
Let's not even talk about
it. Don't you want to get into it? Well, speaking of those Colts, they were looking to right the ship against the New Orleans Saints on Sunday before going into a tough stretch of games against 3 opponents who have a combined record of 18-1. The Colts didn't look like they were really ready to play, spotting the Saints 27 points before finally getting on the board in the third in the form of 2 long touchdown passes to T.Y. Hilton. Now, Indy would score again in the fourth to get within range of a comeback at 27-21, but it was a little bit too late as Saints quarterback Drew Brees played keep away from the Colts defense to run out the clock. So, Jordan, every week it seems like it's a broken record. We sound like broken records, but the Colts continue to disappoint us. With this next month being as tough as it is, what are the chances the Colts can right the ship before it's really too late?
Not very high chances at all. I was at this game, actually, and it was the worst Colts game I've ever been to. I've been to probably 10 or so games throughout my life, including in 2011 when I went to – it was their first win of the year. I think it was against Houston they had at home that game. And even with that team on the field, I've never been more disappointed in a Colts offense. Maybe it's because that late in the season I was expecting the Colts to be really bad because they were awful that year. This year, obviously, everyone was hyped up. You had all these offensive weapons. You got Andre Johnson coming in, Frank Gore coming in, Luck one more year, T.Y. one more year. Moncrief's supposed to make the leap. You got Fleener and Allen, and you got all these pieces. And there's just been nothing. It's been absolutely flat. It's been an embarrassment. And at this point, I don't know if Chuck Pagano's lost the locker room because it seems like everyone wants to play for him. But at some point, someone in the locker room, as far as a player goes, needs to step up and get them figured out, get them sorted straight, because they're just not showing up to games. They started this game against New Orleans in a 20-0 hole because of a couple turnovers, one from Luck on an interception it was more he was fooled by the defense, and it was a good play by the defense, but nonetheless gave New Orleans a short field, and then Griff Whalen's fumble. It's just stuff like that, along with holding penalties. They're just it's mind-boggling because I can't put my thumb on what is the one big problem. I think it's been a little bit of Andrew Luck has finally kind of shown he's human and that he's no longer covering up the Colts' warts like he has the last 3 years. But also, the personnel's not right. Pagano can't get everybody to be on the same page. Pep Hamilton's not calling very consistent offensive games. Frank Gore gets running, gets going good, and then he goes away from him. Granted, that wasn't the situation in New Orleans, but it certainly was against New England. It's just you can't get everything right, and it's so frustrating because they seem lost.
Right, and before I let you go, Alec, I do want to point out, I know that you spoke about as far as a player needing to kind of help them right the ship, and I think this is really where the Colts offensive-wise are missing Reggie Wayne. They don't have that one veteran who they can go to that's been there. Of course, they brought in Andre Johnson and, as you said, Frank Gore, but they're new. This is their first year in Indy. Reggie Wayne, at this point, this is when he would, rally the troops in practice or, even after a game and say, hey, we need to turn this around now. Obviously Reggie's been, he's been through it all at this point, and unfortunately he doesn't have a team. But this will be where the Colts are missing the most, I think.
I agree with you guys, but I just want to start off with some quick quotes after the game. Andrew Luck, we are still a really good team, I think. DeQuell Jackson said, we didn't go out there and give up. We tried until the very end. I'll tell you what the problem is right now, fellas. They think this is some youth sports league where you're going to get a participation trophy at the end of the season. Fellas, this is a 16-game season. You are in the National Football League. I don't want to hear about you not trying to the end, or you still think you're a football team that's worthy of even having Super Bowl aspirations. I'm sick of it. This is a struggling football team with an inept front office. The coaching staff is below average. We're just going to say it. I know we have Chuck strong supporters, and the story is great and everything, but Chuck Pagano is not made to be a starting head football coach for any team in this league. Pep Hamilton, your offense worked great in Palo Alto. It's not working in Naptown. I want you out. Minuski, you don't have a great defense. I understand that, but the defensive scheme you are running ain't working anymore. I want you out. I'm sick of this team. I had high aspirations. I was drinking that cherry Kool-Aid all season. I thought 13-3 Super Bowl. I was ready. for the Lombardi Trophy. I'm sitting here 3-4. Not even. I know for a fact we're not gonna beat the Carolina Panthers next Monday night. So you know what I want? Get me on the field. I'll coach his team. I'll quarterback. I'll do whatever I need to bring a championship to Naptown because we deserve that much for putting up with this below-average football team that is formerly the Indianapolis Colts.
I think you hit the nail on the head. And I do want to touch on one topic also. You talked about Reggie Wayne earlier. Corey Redding's also a huge loss. The defense, as you kind of talked about there, it's been good in parts, but it's not been the defense we all imagine, especially when you bring in a defensive coach like Chuck Pagano. And I agree with you. I think Chuck Pagano, he's got a fantastic story, but he needs to be a defensive coordinator. That's where he was best at. That's what he really should be focusing on. I don't know why he's not focusing on the defense or why they can't get things right. Some of it is personal issues. They're also one of the oldest teams in the league because Grigson keeps grabbing these 34-year-old free agents and bringing them in. Todd Harriman hasn't played in 2 games because he's been a healthy scratch and an inactive list, despite giving him all that money. Andre Johnson making $21 million over 3 years to sit there and catch 2 touchdowns against the Texans once a year. And then Frank Gore, he's been a bit of a good addition, and he's certainly given some stability, but that falls on Pep Hamilton as well because he's not getting him the ball consistently. Pep Hamilton, when he first came in, wanted to do this power run. We're going to control the ball. We're going to rely on the run game and rely on defense and keep it close and control the clock. Now they're trying to do that. They've got a running back that can do that, and once it starts working, they go away from it because they get impatient. They're like, well, let's air it out. We've got all these shiny new toys to use. Philip Dorsett, the first-round draft pick, out with a fractured ankle for at least a month. Deron Carter, the superstar receiver that's supposed to have all this high potential, Chris Carter's son, not even going to make the roster because he's still such a project. They're bringing on Quan Bray. You got Griff Whalen, who's now going to be the number 4 receiver behind Andre Johnson. Like, this team is depleting very fast. I don't care if they play in the AFC South because now rumors are circulating that if the Colts are 3-6 by week 10, which is when their bye week is, there's a very good possibility Chuck Pagano's out of a job. And if that's the case, you might as well go and kiss the season goodbye because interim coaches are not typically that successful. I saw a stat that said throughout the last 19 years, there's been an interim head coach at least one per year. They've only won on average 4 games. 4 games. That's it. That's not going to get you into the playoffs. Even if it does, that's not going to win you a playoff game.
Well, Jordan, let me bring this up to you then. Would it be better for the Colts to fire Pagano come week 10 and just kind of accept the fact you're going to be gone at the end of the season and we'll get a new coach hired for next season, or fire him week 10 and then just ride out the rest of the season with an assistant coach being the interim coach?
The problem is I don't know who you put it interim coach.
I mean, if you kind of think about the one, I guess if there is a top candidate for the job,
no, it's not going to be him. I already know who you're going to say.
It would be Pep Hamilton.
No, it's not going to be because the thing is that what they need to do is they need to do what the Lions did. They need to move on for Pep Hamilton. It is not working. Not working one bit. And that partly falls back on Grigson. Grigson wanted Pep Hamilton. Chuck Pagano did not want Pep Hamilton as his offensive coordinator. He did not want him at all. You also have Rob Chudzinski there, who could be an interim coach, but he's a Pagano guy. So if Pagano goes, Chudzinski's probably not going to stay. You can't make Minuski the head coach. So, I don't know where you go. I think you have to write it out. But at the same time, I wouldn't blame him for firing him because then you're automatically making it known, hey, we're going to be looking. Let's go ahead and start plugging some phone calls maybe. And then it's so frustrating because I don't care if they're 3-6 or if they somehow have a winning record at the bye week. When it comes playoff time, this team is not going to be ready because they haven't looked ready all year. The offensive line is committing stupid penalties. Anthony Costanzo has been he admitted to himself in the press and the post game that he's not been playing up to his contract. He doesn't care if he's playing for $5 a game. He's not playing good enough. He's tied for the league lead in holding penalties. He's not been a good left tackle. The offensive line, it's gotten better over the last couple of weeks, but certainly it's not been good while Andrew Luck's been under center. Andrew Luck himself has not looked like himself, whether it's the injury or him mentally. I don't know what it is, but there are just so many factors going into this. To me, I could care less if we win the AFC South. I would actually, honestly, if we did fire Chuck Pagano, I'd rather just see us lose the rest of the year, get a good draft pick, and then start over. Because everybody needs to go. I think we need to change the defensive scheme. The 3-4 is not working. I think the offense needs to change a little bit, so Pep Hamilton needs to be gone. Chuck Pagano, like I said, he's a good defensive coordinator. I don't think he's a great head coach. He needs to be gone. We need a more offensive-minded head coach to use all these shiny new toys. They need to get rid of some of these veteran contracts that they got because Andre Johnson's been a waste of money so far. If you're just paying him $21 million to show up against the Texans twice a year, You could pay Reggie Wayne that. You could pay Reggie Wayne $5 million for 1 year, and he'd show up against the Texans. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. They're just throwing this money around.
One guy who's definitely been a consistent bright spot for the Colts has been Pat McAfee. It's really strange that you hear a punter being named as a star of a team, but against New Orleans, he had 10 punts for net yardage total of 453 yards. His longest was a 61-yard punt, and that game had a really high amount of punts. It ended up being 20 punts, 10 for each punter. So if anything, I think McAfee should, get a little bit of a pay raise if we're going to be paying these receivers that much for not really showing up to games when your punter is arguably the best in the league and will probably be a Hall of Famer punter, which you don't see often.
Yeah, I think Andre Johnson needs to go ahead and give Pat McAfee his contract.
He needs to refund his contract. Is what needs to happen.
You got anything else? I know you sweating over there. We want to let you cool off. Are you all right?
I'm good. I just don't have anything else to say. Real. I mean, if they can beat up on the AFC South, kudos. But when it comes to big games and out of conference opponents, they just don't show up. I said I wasn't gonna get mad. I got mad, but hey, I can't help it.
Might as well slap another banner up there and say 2015 AFC South champions. Woohoo! Good job. You didn't do anything else.
Shouldn't have left the AFC East to begin with. We would have at least been in a competitive division. But hey, I'm sleep, man.
Well, on that note, we'll step away for a bit so people can cool off. But when we come back, we'll discuss more of the top stories coming out of Week 7. Also, we'll have your World Series preview for tonight's Game 1. Stay tuned here on SETV 12.
Newman Catholic Club is a great way to get involved at USI. NCC aims to assist students in continuing their religious journey throughout their college career. Newman Catholic Club provides students with great opportunities to meet new friends and grow in their faith through their weekly meetings, masses, and service projects.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's a good way to get to know other people in the same faith and just to really have good, solid friendships.
Newman Catholic Club, where hearts speak to hearts.
And welcome back to Run the Play. We're going to turn our attention now to a few other notable headlines from Week 7 of the NFL season. The Dallas Cowboys will not punish defensive lineman Greg Hardy for his outburst on the sideline during the loss against the New York Giants on Sunday. Hardy was seen pushing and yelling at teammates and Dallas special teams coach after the Cowboys gave up a go-ahead kickoff return for a touchdown that would ultimately seal the fate of the Cowboys in that game. So, Alec, do you agree with Jerry Jones's philosophy, I guess, of no discipline?
Honestly, I don't, because at this point, Greg Hardy's starting to really set a tone for himself throughout the league, show who he really is, show his true colors. And honestly, I mean, I can understand there's players, I understand, want to rah-rah, get the troops rallied, get them hyped and everything. But what he did, I was always taught in youth sports, you don't disrespect the coach, ever. And slapping the clipboard out of a coach's hand is just something you don't do on any level, especially at pro level. You should know better. And you could see Des Bryant on the sideline when Hardy was going off on him. He's like, man, chill out. It's not that serious. There's no reason to do all that to try to get the Cowboys pumped up. I just think it's really the Cowboys' way of trying to stay relevant because, as we all know, they've had one playoff game win since the triplets era of Aikman, Irvin, and Emmitt Smith. And I just feel like the Cowboys are using Greg Hardy as a ploy to, stay relevant because they're 2-4. They probably aren't going to make the playoffs. And I just think with Greg Hardy, they can keep that mainstream media, relevance throughout the NFL.
Well, and this is my personal opinion, I don't think Greg Hardy should be in the NFL. After everything that happened with his case with his ex-girlfriend that got dismissed, he really got off on a technicality, had that 10-game suspension reduced to 4. I just don't see why someone like him, I'm all for second chances. Michael Vick, great story. There's been other second chances, like Ray Rice isn't getting his second chance right now. Adrian Peterson's getting a little bit of a second chance here. Like, you see these all the time, and I'm all for second chances. But when it's someone like him that continues to make himself look this bad, Like, this isn't him trying to get people fired up. That was him just being literally upset, legitimately upset with the special teams because they gave up a touchdown. He felt like they did something on purpose or something. And, like, with Des Bryant, whenever it was first reported, it was Greg Hardy, Des Bryant get to an altercation. Why? Because they're both very loud. They're both very opinionated people that like to blow up on the sideline. Des Bryant, I feel like, is a little bit more of a controlled case. I just feel like Greg Hardy is just out of control. I agree with you. They signed him because, it's the Dallas Cowboys. It's going to get him attention. Good, bad publicity, it doesn't matter to Jerry Jones because that means people are paying attention to the Cowboys. And while I don't know if they win the NFC East, I mean, really anybody can win that NFC East, especially once they get Romo and Dez back. But it's just like, why is he still in the NFL? He continues to make examples like this of why he shouldn't be, and I just don't understand why nobody's done anything about it, let alone the owner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Right, and you spoke about Dez Bryant being more of a controlled case. That's just not recent. Remember, a few years ago, that was Dez blowing up on the sidelines and and going crazy. Granted, he never shoved a coach or anything, at least not to my knowledge. But but yeah, I definitely understand. It's kind of interesting how you see those levels. I think kind of as you said with Jerry and that philosophy of why he's not doing anything. I think he felt that he was able to control Dez, so that gives him that confidence. Oh, I can control Greg Hardy. Well, that's that philosophy isn't going to work with everybody. Not everybody is willing to be controlled, and as at least as we see right now, Greg Hardy is of that mindset.
Exactly, and I feel like Greg Hardy probably told Jerry Jones everything he needed to hear. Jerry needed to hear so he could get that contract because at the end of the day, it is a business, so he needed money to sustain his way of living. But I just feel like a person like that, on deep down within, they're not going to change. He is who he is. We've seen it. He shouldn't go without discipline. Maybe not public discipline. Maybe he'll get sat on the sideline for the next game or something. Just keep it within, keep it so it doesn't leak to the media. But I agree with Jordan 100%. I don't think he should be in the league at all.
And just to kind of fall back on what you're saying, this isn't the first time Jerry Jones has tried to take a person that's had a bit of a bad character issue and try to morph him into something else. He had T.O. He was more of just a loudmouth. He had Pac-Man Jones. That really worked out well. Not to mention they also drafted Randy Gregory, who was dumb enough to fail a marijuana test the day before the combine. So, it's just one of those things where he keeps bringing in these bad character players or low character players, and it's really not working. It's worked with Dez Bryant because he's a supreme talent, and ultimately, talent's what talks. And so, you can usually, that's just Dez being Dez because Dez is one of the top receivers in the league. Greg Hardy is a great defensive lineman, was a former All-Pro, certainly has some talent, but there comes a time when you can find replacement-level defensive linemen, especially within your own team. I don't see why he's still in the league with his history, both on and off the field.
Absolutely, and I guess to make kind of matters worse for that whole situation was that the Cowboys lost that game on a kickoff return by a former Cowboy. That irony just made me laugh. The whole 100 yards he was running up the field. So, well, speaking of the New York Giants and scary defensive linemen, you probably don't want to upset. On Monday, team officials met with injured star Jason Pierre-Paul to check on the status of his recovering hand, as well as work on a contract to finally get him back on the field. Now, reporters have said that the two sides are working on a short-term deal that would include a roster exemption so that he can begin practicing. Now, although nothing is official yet, JPP hopes to return to the playing field by Week 10 to face the New England Patriots. Everybody wants to play the Patriots, right? So, Jordan, I guess we'll go ahead and start with you. What's your thought kind of on this whole situation? It's been, it's been brewing for months, the offseason, ever since the accident itself, leading up to now. So,
well, I just think that it's a good move, especially for both sides. Jason Pierre-Paul, deserves to remain a Giant. Granted, while he lost a finger or part of his other finger as well, he's a defensive lineman. It really doesn't matter. I know the Giants said they're comfortable with his health situation because at the end of the day, when you're a defensive player, you don't really need all your fingers. You're just trying to get the quarterback as a defensive end. And certainly Jason Pierre-Paul can do that. And certainly he deserves his money because he's a very good player. I think it's a great move. I think it's about time that they got this worked out. I think JPP's finally gotten to a comfortable state with his hand to where he feels like he can play football again. And I look for them to sign this one-year deal and then probably sign a long-term deal after this year for him to stay in New York.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if the Giants and JPP feel that he's at a point with his hand that he's ready and, he can go out there and compete with his teammates, sign him for the short-term deal, and then look at his play for the rest of the season. Then next offseason, start talking about maybe a long-term deal. And if it's just not there, let him walk, because you're not really taking any sort of financial hit, really, if you just let him walk after next season. I mean, he came back and he upped his own stock, so he's going to get paid regardless if he comes back to New York or goes somewhere else next offseason and does well once he comes back. In week 10, I believe you said, Rick. So, I mean, more power to him. I'm happy about it because it was an unfortunate situation, a very dumb situation to put himself into, but a very unfortunate one. I'm just happy to see he's back on the field because I feel like at his height, JPP was one of the best D linemen in all of football.
Absolutely, and as you said, it was a very unfortunate and, for lack of a better word, dumb situation to put yourself in. But at the same time, I mean, you kind of have to take a look at, be thankful, at least from the Giants' point of view, of course. They should, I don't know if they would consider themselves thankful, but lucky that he didn't sign that big money contract. That contract, not the extension.
$19 million tender.
Signed $19 million, say, a week before 4th of July when he messes his hand up. So that's kind of just something to think about. But yeah, as long as they know that he's physically ready, they'll put him back on the field, and all power to him. Hopefully he can get back to that star
certainly.
form.
And I think a big thing with JPP is he just wants to play again. I think he's just missing football, and so I think he'll be willing to sign for a little bit cheaper. So in the end, I think it'll be a good deal for both sides, depending on what the contract terms are. I know it's going to be incentive based, so it could be a little bit lower price just from a base salary wise. And I think that's good for both sides because JPP, like you said, can up his stock a little bit if he does test free agency, and surely someone will sign him because he's still a talented player. So,
yeah. I guess we'll have to stay tuned for that. But moving on to the diamond now, gentlemen, it is finally upon us. The World Series is here. But a few years ago, if someone told you that in 2015 you'd see the Kansas City Royals and the New York Mets where they are today, you'd probably have them admitted into a psych ward and think they were crazy. But, I mean, nonetheless, the Royals and the Mets are here, and both are ready to earn their first World Series championship since the mid-'80s. We weren't even around yet. Barely twinkles in our dad's eyes. But anyways, Alec, since the Mets beat your beloved Cubs, are you siding with them to beat the Royals and win that World Series?
No. So, basically for Game 1, we got Edison Volquez for the Royals against Matt Harvey of the Mets. This is going to be the tone setter for the series. If the Mets can, throw out Matt Harvey and he has a dominant performance, I'm going to lean towards the Mets. But I feel like the Royals, some way, shape, or form, by the 8th inning, will rally off 10 runs, and ended up being 14-2. And it won't even be Matt Harvey's fault. So honestly, I'm going to say Royals in 6, but it's going to be an outstanding matchup, I think. Just a great pitching duel you're going to see that whole Mets rotation really come in and really, show, hey, we're going to be here for the next 5 to 10 years. This is how we're going to win. And you're going to see the Royals finally come together, all that defense and all that timely hitting, and they're finally going to win their first World Series since '86, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is going to be the Royals as well. I've got them in 7 games, though, just because they've been here. They've known this situation. They lost it last year, and I think they're very hungry to get a win this year. As you said, and we've talked about on the show, they're very good defensively, and they're very good with situational hitting, and that's what gets you really wins in the postseason, along with good pitching. And certainly we have 2 very good staffs. I think the Mets have the advantage in the staff as far as starting rotation goes, but I think the Royals have a bit of an advantage in the bullpen. And so it's certainly going to come down to who has the better pitching and who hits at the right time and scores the right runs. But overall, I think I am going to take Kansas City. They have that feel to them about a team that's ready to win a World Series.
All right. Okay. And you know me, I'm usually the devil's advocate. You guys pick the same team, and by contrast, I have to pick the other one. But I'm also going to go the Royals, and I'm going to tell you why. Because in an interview yesterday, I believe, Mr. Carmelo Anthony of the New York Knicks said that besides the colors, he sees similarities in the Knicks and Mets.
Oh, that's not good.
Now, that in and of itself right there.
Mets getting swept.
Yep. I don't know about getting swept, but yeah, I don't see them winning a World Series just because Melo had to open his mouth and say something. I'm not the biggest, and I don't watch that much baseball, and I haven't really watched these much teams. Exactly, Tristan, exactly. But, yeah, I don't really watch either of these 2 teams, but from what I've seen, I like the Royals anyway. But just to make matters worse for the Mets, Carmelo had to say that he compared his team to the Mets.
It's just like if he's basing off last season for the Knicks, the Mets team might get swept because that season was awful last year for the Knicks. I know they've improved. I know the Mets have improved, and they've certainly shown they can play here. They still have some good ball players, but man, That's saying a lot if you're comparing him to the New York Knicks.
Let me get this again, guys. Who does everybody have to win the World Series? 'Cause I know Jordan, you said Royals.
Yep.
Ricky,
I'm going Royals too.
Alec.
Royals.
Am I the only one saying Mets here?
Mellow
Apparently.
Dundum. I'm going Royals, man. I have to.
Alex thinks Mets in 7, but he's rooting for the Royals. I kind of want to see the Royals win it, but I feel like the Mets are going to because of that starting pitching rotation. And I think that Daniel Murphy's going to keep hitting home runs for days.
It's got to stop at some point.
It's not going to stop.
I mean, hey, we saw it stop eventually with the Cubs.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, this is just one person, so I mean, it should stop if it's just one person. But hey, you never know. He's having a great stretch, nonetheless. Though.
Yeah, in the words of Puffy for Daniel Murphy, he can't stop, won't stop, don't even know how to stop.
You forgot the We'll have to go ahead and take a quick break again, folks. But when we come back, we finally get to discuss the NBA opening night tonight. And also, as promised, we'll debut our new segment called Where You At, Though? Run the play. We'll be right back.
You're watching Screaming Eagles TV 12.
We're best buds.
And welcome back again to Run the Play. Now, after months of offseason free agent drama headlined by LaMarcus Aldridge and DeAndre Jordan, and players crying over not winning the title, LeBron James, or the MVP, James Harden, it is finally time to just lace the shoes up, throw on the jersey, and play. The NBA regular season kicks off tonight on TNT with a great slate of games headlined by the defending Eastern Conference champs, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and my Chicago Bulls. See Rodman right there? Rodman. Woo. But then also after that, the defending champs, the Golden State Warriors, take on the New Orleans Pelicans and the savior of the franchise, Anthony Davis. Now, there are so many different headlines in between these games. I couldn't even think which one to write down for the teleprompter. So, Jordan, I'm going to throw it to you. Wherever you want to start, go for it.
Well, I think the big question right now is the Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron James had that shot in his back to take away some of the inflammatory situation that he had there. He certainly looks like he's good to go. Kevin Love's coming back from his shoulder injury. Kyrie Irving's still not there. I think in general the big story for this season is, will the Cavs win the championship? Will Cleveland finally get their title, which would be the first time since 1964. So certainly a long drought there. And as just for my Pacers, certainly looking forward to watching them get started tomorrow night. Unveiling that small ball, fast-paced, almost fitting the name more in the city more with the racing style to run up and down the court, put a lot of points. Certainly going to be an exciting season to watch this year.
Oh, yeah, and then when you look at the Pelicans and the Golden State Warriors matchup, it's ring night out in the Bay, so the team's going to be all pumped for that, and the fans are going to be, of course, always raucous as they are out in Oracle. But you don't want to have a letdown because Anthony Davis, he's no slouch. That team, is kind of subpar around it, but he's on a fringe MVP candidate coming into the season. And then you also look at the Golden State Warriors. They have Steph coming back. Can he repeat, or is Clay gonna show up and finally be a consistent type of player every night in and night out? Is Draymond Green going to be worthy of that big money contract? Is Harrison Barnes going to prove himself so he can get a big contract? There's so many storylines, but the one big storyline to take away from that game is probably the next generational matchup, which is going to be Anthony Davis between Steph Curry, because you may say, oh, well, Anthony Davis can't, guard the type of guard. But before he hit that huge growth spurt, he was a 6'3" guard in high school guarding the players like Steph Curry. So he has the lateral quickness to keep up with them and everything. So I think that's a big matchup to look forward, not only to tonight, but the next 5-7 years.
Yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And Tristan, I didn't forget, but I'll let you go ahead and say it. And the third game of the NBA slate will be
Detroit versus Atlanta, which is a little bit of a big deal if we're going to talk about the big Eastern Conference teams, just because Atlanta kind of has a shot of being top 5. Actually, we can just go ahead and say they're a lock for being top 5 in the Eastern Conference. There's no way around it. They're going to be up there. So Detroit, Atlanta starting off the games tonight at 7, along with Cleveland, Chicago at 7. These times all Central, and New Orleans, Golden State at 9:30.
See, but there's a reason they put the Atlanta game at the same time as the Cleveland game, because as good as the Hawks are, there's really not any big names on that team. I do love Jeff Teague, from Indianapolis, certainly, a good person to root for. Kyle Korver's fun to watch. Other than that, it's just they're the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah.
It's not the Dominique Wilkins Hawks either. It's just they're the Hawks. And then you got the Pistons on their side. They're just Stan Van Gundy and
who even plays for them anymore?
We got Stanley Johnson. We got Brandon Jennings, Reggie Jackson, Andre Drummond.
They lost Greg Monroe.
Yeah.
No, they gave him away.
That's true. They let him walk in free agency. So
Yeah. So exactly, who plays for them, right?
Yeah. All the reason to not leave them in the rundown, but that's okay. That's all right. That's all right. They'll be on TV one of these days, just not tonight. But all right. Now I guess it's time to move on to our favorite, or our new favorite segment, I should say. Usually this is when we debut our game, Shot Clock. But today we're going to debut my favorite game, brainchild of mine, called Where You At, Though?
Where You At, Though?
Where you at, though?
We each will have, we'll say 30 seconds or so. It's not really scored or counted like Shot Clock is. And we basically just take the time to call out a sports figure and basically tell them to get their act together, either because, who knows, they're getting overpaid or they're on our fantasy team, something crazy like that. So, Alec, we'll go ahead and let you go first.
All right.
The floor is yours, sir.
All right. Well, Carmelo Anthony, where you at, though? You finally got that big contract. You stayed loyal to the city of New York. And, last season was a rebuilding season. You after the All-Star break, you took the surgery for your knee. Now you're coming into this new season, slimmed down. This team is still rebuilding. Your coach got in a fight with a former teammate. The first-round pick either has a high ceiling as Dirk or it could be a bust. This is really your time to shine in a lowly East to get a low seed and show the people of New York that the Knicks can finally contend, maybe not for a championship this season, but eventually before you retire, because those New York fans and Spike Lee are hungry for a title. So, Carmelo Anthony, where art thou?
Where art thou? I like that.
Jordan, go ahead.
All right. Ryan Mallett, I get it. Okay, you're an NFL quarterback. You feel a little bit privileged, but you're not on a very good Houston team, and this is going to go back to Hard Knocks. When you overslept, where are you? You overslept. You missed practice in a meeting, and then now you're late because of traffic. You missed your flight, and you had to take a commercial flight to Florida. You're lucky Bill O'Brien did not cut you on that day. He got talked out of it by the GM. He was willing to go with only Brian Hoyer at quarterback on Sunday because you were in traffic. Seriously, dude. Now you're unemployed. You're probably not going to find a job. Where are you at?
That's just hilarious. You'd have thought he would have got it together after the first, but who knows? All right.
It's unbelievable.
Well, we'll see. I guess I'm up.
Eventually.
Yeah, right.
They just want to keep the camera on me. That's all it was.
All right. Mr. Derrick Rose, where you at, though? I'm wearing your shirt. Right behind Alec is another shirt of yours. I know you were out because you broke your orbital bone. You're wearing a mask. You're coming back. You're going to start tonight, which is great. But at this point, I need that to continue all season. If you have to take a break for one game, I understand that, or something here and there, because your knees are pretty much gone. But the city of Chicago, we need you to stay upright. We have Jimmy Butler, but we still need you for now. You're getting paid all that money. It's time for you to put up and let's go to work. No more worrying about your son's graduation in 18 years. All that will work itself out. Derrick Rose, we need you now. Where you at, though?
Too bad it's Jimmy Butler's team.
I agree. I definitely agree it's Jimmy Butler's team now. But still, if you're gonna be there, if you're gonna be that number one guy on the most paid of the team, you need to show up.
Well, it's
So his
certainly,
knees need to show up first.
Yeah,
but hey, that's a
that's
different
true.
story.
Like his knees will stay intact, but
Rick, let me get into something else. I thought you were going to talk about the NFL rookies. What happened?
I got distracted by my shirt.
Where you at, Rick?
Rick, where you at?
where you at though?
What I was gonna say, since he brought it up, NFL rookies not named Todd Gurley, you are nowhere to be found. I'm not even gonna ask where you at, because you don't know where you at. If your name isn't Todd Gurley, our Florida manager, had to ask us who the first overall pick was. And we weren't sure at first. Jameis Winston, where you at? Marcus Mariota, you hurt, but where you at? I don't even know who else was drafted.
Leonard
after
Williams, where are you at?
Who?
Philip Dorsett, where are you at? Like
Don-
Dante Fowler. Well,
Dante-
he tore his
gets an
ACL.
excuse.
That's
Dante
not
Fowler
fair.
gets an excuse.
That's
He
not
tore
fair.
his ACL. Tristan was in our ear saying Dante Fowler. But certainly, there's been all kinds of rookies that have not showed up. Melvin Gordon, where are you at? San Diego traded up to get you. It's
You
been
chill on the
unreal.
beach somewhere. You don't even go to games no more. Anyways, well, that's all the time we have for today, unfortunately. It has been real. But don't worry, we will be back on Thursday, ready to brighten up your day once again. Make sure you do follow us individually on Twitter, as well as SETV12. For Alec Bradley, Jordan Fisher, and Tristan White, I'm Ricky Covington, and this has been Run the Play.